Hello and welcome to the Redefining High Performance Podcast. My name is Ty Bennett. I'm excited that you're here with us as every week I bring you a quick, practical, simple takeaway podcast where in just a few minutes I'm going to share with you some ideas that today you'll be able to use in your personal life, in your leadership experience. I think this is going to give you some cool insights. And it all comes from the research study that we did titled Redefining High Performance. It was a national research study, PhD led, one of the biggest of its kind. And if you haven't done so, you can go to my website, tybennett.com, and you can download a free copy of the white paper that dives in deeper on all of this research. Past episodes of this podcast, I have gone into one specific aspect of the research, so that's another way that you can access some of those insights. And today is going to be another one of those episodes. When we looked at drivers of high performance, we asked several questions around what drives high performance, what sets people apart. One of those questions was, what do you think makes an individual in an organization high performing? So maybe you're part of an organization. I don't know where you work, what team you're part of, what organization, maybe an association, maybe a church, maybe an organization, could be a family, right? What makes an individual within that structure, within that organization high performing? And the number one answer that came back out of that in two different ways was basically motivation. Having motivation and drive or personal motivation ranked very high in terms of those answers. And so I want you to think about, when I say the word motivation, what comes to mind for you or who comes to mind for you? Because there's some people that are just driven, right? There's some people that you're like, oh my gosh, they're so motivated. They're so ambitious. They have a lot of energy. Maybe that's not you, but I want you to think about motivation. Is it something that you're born with or something you can develop? I think a lot of people think that it's something that you're born with, something that's natural. And although there are some people who have a little bit more ambition naturally or a little bit more motivation naturally, there are components that create motivation that you can use for yourself individually and as a leader. And that's what I want to dive into, is how do we grow that motivation? As a keynote speaker who's been speaking for organizations for 15 plus years, I'll bet the number one question that I've gotten from people after sessions is, Ty, how do I motivate my people? I'm often speaking to leaders of organizations, and they are always looking at, how do I motivate my people? And I want to distinguish between extrinsic motivation and intrinsic motivation. Extrinsic, meaning outside of you, is kind of the proverbial carrot and the stick, right? The carrot being incentives. What kind of incentive is going to encourage people to do more, show up more, perform higher? Or what's the punishment if they don't, that's going to drive them to perform at a higher level? Extrinsic motivation is going to be short lasting, if that, right? It's not going to be something that's sustaining. Intrinsic motivation is internal, and it goes back to that question of, are we born with it or can we develop it? I want to share with you some research that we found. It's called the self-determination theory. This is probably the best research ever done on motivation. And it was done by two individuals, Edward Deci of Rochester University and Richard Ryan of the Australian Catholic University. They originated this theory. And as they studied both extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, what they came away with is basically there are three components that create the right situation for motivation to grow, to thrive, and to sustain. So my question is, what are those three components? How do I apply them to my life? And as a leader, how do I put them in place for my people to be more motivated? Well, the three components are a combination of autonomy, competency, and relatedness. Let's break each of those down. Autonomy is the perspective that we have control of our outcome. We also have agency in the path to create that outcome, right? It's choice. Choice is essential in that component, but autonomy doesn't mean you have to be running solo. You can be part of a team, part of an organization, and still have autonomy or feel like you do. It's when you feel like somebody is managing every moment, when they're pulling the strings, when you're a puppet. That's when motivation goes down, because you lose that sense of control, that sense of autonomy, the sense of showing up and being able to put your own creative spin on it, being able to come up with your own solutions. That, how do I move forward? That sense of ownership, that's extremely important. So for you to be able to create that space, but also as a leader to be able to say, how do I give my people autonomy? How do I give them a sense of control, a sense of ownership? They're going to show up better, more motivated if they have that. The second component is competency. Obviously, you need skills, but competency goes beyond skill. As leaders, I think we often view competency as simply skill, but it's more. There's three components to competency. It's skill, it's also experience, and confidence. Those are three different components. Those together create competence. If we look at it just from a skill perspective, I'm a big basketball guy. It's very rare that you get a freshman in college or rookie in the NBA that comes in and has a huge impact right away. Why? It's not because they lack skill. Some of them are the most skilled player on the court, but what they lack is experience and confidence in those game situations. So some of that takes a little bit of time. Having the skill is one thing, being able to execute that skill in the moments that it needs to and understanding how to apply it in that given situation. If we can create that and help people grow through that so that they have real competence to get the job done, that creates a strong sense of motivation, right? If you show up at your job and you feel like you're beating your head against the wall, you feel like you can't figure it out, that you're always losing, that's pretty demotivating. But if you feel like you have the ability to get through it, even if it's challenging, that competence will drive your motivation. The third component is relatedness, connection. Do they feel connected to the team, to the people that they're working with, to you as their leader? Do they feel a sense of care? Do they feel seen, heard, understood? Do they feel like you are actually there for them? Do you have their back? Right? Those things matter. But beyond that, also a connection to the purpose, the overall goal, the vision of what they're trying to create. If we want people to be motivated, and personal motivation, ambition, drive, that creates high performance in big ways, there are three components that need to be in place to create the right atmosphere for intrinsic motivation to thrive. They are autonomy, a sense of choice, a sense of ownership, competency, skills, experience, and confidence coming together, and relatedness, connection to both the people and the purpose of what they're doing. When we can put that in place, we now have the fertile ground for motivation to grow, right? We can put that in place. So hopefully as a leader, you can think about that, assess how you're leading your teams. You can think about the situation you're putting them in, think about those people individually, and in those three components, say, okay, what are they lacking? Or what's the area in which this could be better created for them to have a little bit more motivation and drive towards that? Personal motivation is something that can be grown. It's something that can be created, and great leaders create the atmosphere for people to be able to grow in that motivation and thrive in what they're doing. That's the insight for today. I hope this has been helpful. The three components of motivation. This research, again, if you want to dive into it deeper, go to my website, tybennett.com, and download the white paper. I'll come back to you again next week with another insight from the research. Thank you for listening. If you haven't done so, please give us a rating or review. I appreciate that. That helps so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.